Hi everyone. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. My name is Egbert Bongmalaitong, and I'm the Assistant Curator of Commerce and Publications here at the ICA. I know that there are many arts events happening tonight, so hopefully you can attend those things too, and maybe I will see you later. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping notes to use the back exit if you need to step away during the program. If you need to use the restroom, we have facilities on the 3rd and 1st levels. And a quick reminder, we have 3 more ICA shop programs presenting this fall. Next Friday at 6 p.m., Selena Williams will give a workshop called Emergent Collaging, a collaging activity inspired by Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategies. Slots are limited, so be sure to RSVP. On December 3rd, Ebony Williams will host a night of readings from the Racial Equity Essays, continuing the discussion from last month's summit. And then on December 10th, the ICA will launch the Doing Language Word Work project co-curated by myself and Nancy Kalelo Mutiti. So hopefully I will see you there too. And of course, be sure to visit the 3 exhibitions that we have on view if you have not already. And thank you to Vanna for the fabulous tech support. I feel warmth and excitement to be presenting Justin's talk on Afrovisualism today. Justin has been an integral interlocutor in Richmond's community of artists and designers, recently a resident of Exodus School of Expression's inaugural season, and guest lecturer to various design classes this past year. He also assisted the Africana Film Festival on a brand and visual identity refresh with colleagues Kesha Eugene, Farrah Fox, and the ICA's own Meredith Carrington and Anjali Moon. He is the founder and curator of Afrovisualism, his brand platform and practice on Black visual culture. Justin describes his Afrovisualist research practice as crate digging, an immersive sampling process in the creation and development of visual essays, collages, and mood boards. You can find some of his research on the Instagram at Afrovisualism, so make sure to follow him if you don't already. And then after the talk, we will hold for Q&A. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Justin Smith.
First and foremost, I would like to thank the ICA for having me, and I would like to thank all of you who were able to come out here this evening. So, this is my first public lecture for Afrovisualism, my platform on Black visual culture. Introduction to the Black Continuums. Let's get started. So, Afrovisualism, like I said, is my brand, platform, and practice on Black visual culture. For those who are not familiar with Black visual culture, it is the study of the Black image through art, music, film, and media. And what I do with Afrovisualism is that I present the intersection of commentary and theory within the study of Black visual culture. For Afrovisualism, I believe that Black creative expression is in its variations and spectrums. And through this idea of visualism, it's the character of being visual, and it's this idea of visualizing. With Afrovisualism, in the way I've developed my logo, the dots with the line in the middle represent the connecting points, the constellations and the conversations that I have in the context of Black visual culture. So the mission for Afrovisualism is I believe in accessibility when it comes to information regarding Black visual culture. And I believe that commentary should be centered and focused, because with the way that social media has developed, there's so much content out there, and what I like to do with Afrovisualism is give you an an experience unlike any other through Afrovisualism. The vision of Afrovisualism, I intend to establish nuance between Black visual artists, Black popular culture, and critical thought. The reason why I've broken it down in those three areas is because with the varying areas of commentary involving Black visual artists and the culture at large, I like to present an intersection of those perspectives in the way visual artists have their own practice and in the way culture is responded to by the art, and as far as the theory that goes between the art and the culture. Through Afrovisualism, I believe in advocacy. With Afrovisualism, I provide a space for Black creatives across various disciplines to share about their practice. With Afrovisualism, in the way that I like to get to know artists, I like to start off with a conversation of just getting to know them generally about their practice and giving them the platform, if they want to open up about their career and their artistry. With Afrovisualism, the biggest feedback I've had is the level of articulation with my research. And in my analysis of artists, what I like to do is unpack their visual languages by drawing connections between the layered complexities in Black visuality and in the context of Black visual culture. With Afrovisualism, I discuss theory from a critical lens. I talk about existing theory of Black visual culture and media, as well as individual artists' perspectives in their own ways of developing theory through their work. And with Afrovisualism, I have developed my own theoretical perspective, my Afrovisualist perspective in the way the brand has transformed. With the theory comes the practice. With Afrovisualism, it is a immersive research practice where I identify the context and parallels within Black aesthetics, Black culture, Black media, and the Black image. The foundation of Afrovisualism is this idea of the Black visual continuum. And the Black visual continuum is, at all times, the advancement of Black creative expression is continuous. So this idea of the continuum is this idea that's abstract, where something is continuous, it is ongoing. It's always transforming and changing. And that's how I think of Blackness, that's how I see Blackness, and that's how I see the art and cultural production. So to tell you more about the Black visual continuum, Sun Ra is one of those examples. And if you look at Sun Ra on the screen here, he has a very mystical appearance because he is an Afrofuturist jazz artist and creator. And his legacy in the continuum of Afrofuturism is something that I'm deeply interested in. So Afrovisualism has grown into multiple continuums, not just the visual continuum, but also the sonic continuum, the Black sonic continuum. Another word for sonic is music. So when you think of the sonics, think about the drum beats, like Questlove here and his drum set where he has the snare drum, the cymbals, the bass drum. When I think about the sonics in regards to Black music, I'm thinking about how the experience of the music makes me feel and the response I have to the pounding of the bass and the syncopation of the rhythms. The third continuum is the Black popular continuum or the Black popular culture continuum. When I think of Black popular culture, I think of Michael Jackson. The reason why this is Michael Jackson in this photo is because you see his shoes and you see his silhouette. When it comes to popular culture, I think about how artists in the creative sense portray themselves in their work. Like Michael Jackson, he shows himself in a silhouette when he's on stage dancing, and his signature when he does the toe stand is his shoes. Continuing this idea of the continuum, one of the artists that inspired the idea of the way that I see this continuum is Jen Nakiru. She is a filmmaker and an artist, and she is, and in this quote, she was in conversation with Janelle Monáe, and she was talking about how in this idea of the continuum, none of us experience true freedom, and it will always be a pursuit. We're always still searching. So when I'm thinking of this idea of the continuum, I think of it as a search. I think of it as a dig and constantly being curious. Another artist that I am inspired by when it comes to this idea of the continuum is Arthur Jafa, who is also a filmmaker, just like Jen Nakiru. He says, inside a Black worldview, Black being the Black continuum, it is impossible to separate out what is magnificent and miserable. So in this conversation with theorist Greg Tate, he's talking about how in this idea of the continuum, you can't have the good without the bad. You have all of these ideas, feelings, and complexities that make up the Black worldview. And this is how I think about the continuum as well, because the continuum is always changing, it's always evolving. So this continual idea and how it shows up in artists' work is something that I'm interested in. So to tell you a little more about my research practice, I call my research practice crate digging. And if you're not familiar with the term crate digging is when an artist, usually a music artist, a music producer, goes to a record store to buy vinyl records that they're going to sample on a piece of music that they're creating. And the records are usually in milk crates. That's where the crate and crate digging comes from. And the digging piece is from the intensive process of them going through piles and piles of crates and records that they look for the best sound that they're trying to find, and that becomes the sample that enhances the musical composition that they're creating. And that's how I think about my research. That's how I think about Afrovisualism. With Afrovisualism, I'm always constantly digging, I'm always constantly on the hunt, learning about artists, learning about theorists, learning about musicians, and they're all in this continuum. So these are just some of the topics that I cover. I cover a range of topics ranging from Afrofuturism, Afro-surrealism, Black poetics, Black visual culture, Black popular culture, Black cinema, post-soul, the Black imagination. This is just the tip of the iceberg right here. So much of what I do with Afrovisualism has been inspired in the way that I curate. And initially, my research started with Afrofuturism. And if you look on my Instagram, you see many of the posts I've dedicated to talking about Afrofuturism, and you see it has now branched off into many other areas and disciplines. And when I look at these topics here, I don't see them just as simple categories. Any of these topics can overlap. And that's how I approach my research. I always see what are the connecting points, what are the overlapping points that make up these ideas and concepts. So to tell you all a little more about my research through my writing, I'm very much inspired by how artists use theory in their work. One of those artists being DJ Spooky, who is a DJ and theorist. his quote, "DJing is writing and writing is DJing." This quote struck a chord with me because it exemplifies how I feel about Afrovisualism. With Afrovisualism, I think of myself as a DJ. I think of myself as a DJ putting records on the turntable, mixing them, and keeping them in time with each other. So in the previous slide where you saw the range of topics that I cover, that's how I think of my writing. I'm breaking down these topics through crate digging, and through crate digging, putting them on the turntable or putting them in the mix so you can see the connections, you can see the rhythms, you can see how all of these ideas make up these concepts revolving around the continuum. So these are some of my writings here. This is my series, Black Mannerisms, that I've developed in what I'm calling the Afrovisual series. In this particular series that I call Black Mannerisms, it's inspired by Ernie Barnes. And Ernie Barnes was known for his aesthetic of neo-mannerism, which is basically a style of Renaissance art called mannerism, where the body is elongated, the arms and the legs, and the form is not representational, it's abstract. Like Ernie Barnes' painting here, Sugar Shack, which was one of his most famous paintings, notable on the show Good Times, where the character JJ, that was the painter in the show, those paintings were by Ernie Barnes. So this idea of Black mannerism, I'm thinking about the poetic descriptions and visual interpretations of Blackness and how painters interpret visuals and sound. So with Black mannerisms, I don't just talk about one artist, but I also open up to contemporary artists and how artists like Ernie Barnes, in how Frank Morrison and Kadir Nelson are also a part of this continuum as well. Frank Morrison uses a little more of graffiti in his work and portraiture, like Kadir Nelson. All three of these artists share a common theme with this idea of mannerism and neo-mannerism and what I'm calling this idea of Black mannerisms, because you can see in the style of the black girl's hair, the backdrop of the graffiti, you can see the distinctiveness of the man holding the smartphone and his clothing. So all of these ideas of the continuum I'm illustrating through the past, present, and future. So another way I explore these ideas of the continuum is through my visual continuums series. One of the artists I talked about was Michael Jackson, and this was just a brief overview of the visual themes in his work that he's inspired by. So right here you can see he is paired with Bill Bojangles Robinson, known for his style of vaudeville dance, and you see how him and Michael Jackson are both wearing suits. They're posed a certain way, and it goes to show how Michael was inspired by that particular dance style and his interpretation of it through his song Dangerous that he performed on the 1995 MTV VMAs. So with the Visual Continuums series, I also explored Beyonce's film, Black is King. With this film, I highly recommend it for those who are interested in learning more about the concept of Afrofuturism. I feel like this film exemplifies the visual range of what Afrofuturism is all about. Right here, I'm comparing how Beyonce is dancing with these people called the Dogon. And these people were a tribe in West Africa known for being able to communicate with the stars before the telescope was created. So this goes to show the importance of including the Dogon in this film, shows how Afrofuturism has reached pop culture. And what I'm into how when pop culture is the vehicle in learning about different artists and visuals. So Hank Willis Thomas is one of those artists that explores pop culture through deconstruction, and his quote where he says he's much more influenced by Beyonce than Picasso, what I think about this quote is, for me, pop culture was the gateway in me learning about visual art. So when you look at my Visual Continuum series, I am breaking down these visual references that range from visual art to history to show that these are the continuums that are happening across timelines, across decades. And being that Hank Willis Thomas is using Beyonce as the signifier to show how through the continuum of Beyonce's work is the gateway to those references. Another series where I continue to explore that comparative analysis is my Afrovisual boards, which is a mood board series that is an ongoing series that I'm creating. Right here, continuing how I'm comparing Michael Jackson and Beyonce. On the left, you see Michael Jackson's glove that he wore during his Motown 25 performance in 1983 when he performed the moonwalk for the first time. And this glove was designed by Bill Whitten, who was the brother of abstract artist Jack Whitten. So you see the continuum of abstraction, you see the continuum of fashion, you see the continuums of dance, all wrapped up in one. And the second glove I have here is the glove that Beyonce wore for her I Am Sasha Fierce album from 2008. And this glove was designed by Mugler, who was a French fashion designer, and that glove was from his 1995-1996 fall and winter collection. And what you see is that glove appeared in her Single Ladies video and throughout her Sasha Fierce album. And it's to show that Beyonce was inspired by Michael Jackson with the glove, and because both artists wore this glove, that pointed to their artistry. So that's what I'm interested in with Afrovisualism, is showing how all of these artists are inspired by different things, and I like to show these connections in which how they are inspired. So another theorist that I'm inspired by is Kodwo Eshun. He is a British theorist known for analyzing Black music. And in his book, More Brilliant Than the Sun, Adventures in Sonic Fiction, he calls himself a concept engineer instead of a writer. And he calls himself a concept engineer because he's interested in engineering his own ideas, his own concepts, and mixing them and translating them in the way that he sees things. That is what I do with Afrovisualism, what you see with the Visual Continuum series, the Afrovisual series, the Black Mannerisms essay. These are all examples of me embodying the concept engineering idea that Kodwo Eshun is talking about, and an extension of my ideas on crate digging. Another artist who also is into concepts and ideas is Hassan Rahim. He is an art director and graphic designer. He talks about these ideas of consuming content and finding himself digging in the past. So looking at what I do with Afrovisualism, lots of the work that I've developed has been over the course of social media on Instagram. And with how fast things go now, what I've learned with Afrovisualism is the response that people have when it comes to my content, that they actually take the time to consume my content and take it in and actually read it. That was one of the things that surprised me in the way that I was developing my work, because people were interested in what I was talking about and these ideas, and thinking about how quickly information travels, how quickly ideas travel. I am now also a part of that continuum of ideas in formations and in the way I'm analyzing based on the artists that are existing in their own framework while also developing my own theory as well. So these are just some workshops and lectures that I've done. My first workshop, the Black Visual Continuum workshop, I did over the Exodus residency over the summer. It was a really fun workshop where the artists got together and we just had a conversation. All of us just sat down and just had a conversation about each other's work through mood boards. Each artist presented a mood board with their ideas and concepts that they were working with, and they had to talk through their work. But it wasn't just a talking through session, it was a group discussion where everyone had the chance to learn about their practice. And one of the artists described their reaction to how the workshop was. They felt like that it was just a way for us to nerd out about the art that we loved, and that is it. That is exactly the vision that I have for Afrovisualism, is to give artists the space to just play and nerd out on the things that they care about. Also, in the lectures that I have, the genres of Afrofuturism is a lecture that I dedicate to breaking down all of the genres that make up Afrofuturism. In the other lecture I have, Black Visual Archivism, I talk about these ideas of the archive, and what the archive is not just going to a museum or a library to look at artifacts, but I also talk about the archive of the mind and thinking about art and thinking about the ideas that make up the art. So the archive is not just limited to something that's physical, it's something that's mental, it's something that's continuous. And because I'm introducing the Afrovisualist practice in the crate digging continuum, with that lecture I dig into more about the ideas behind crate digging. So right here are a collection of books that I've collected over the years, ranging from Kehinde Wiley's A New Republic, Beyonce's I Am Sasha Fierce tour book, Hank Willis Thomas, All Things Being Equal, Contact High, A Visual History of Hip Hop, Afrofuturism by Yatasha Womack. These are books that I've been reading and basing my research around because I love art books. I love looking at the photos, reading the text, and doing that deep dive, learning about artists. So, I have a short film I would like to share with you all. This short film is called the Black Visual Continuum Mixtape. And what it essentially is, it's a compilation of clips that show the rhythmic pace of how I research and think about the ideas, concepts, and artists that I just described here. And for me, it's this response to the way that I think about crate digging and the gathering of an archive, a digital archive. And I'm approaching the visuals and the sonics and putting them all together. And the reason why it's called a mixtape is because I'm also applying these sensibilities of hip hop in the way that ideas are packaged and in the way that these ideas are laid out in a way where you have to deconstruct and decipher these ideas based on context. So I'm going to play the video now.
Of course, none of us experience true freedom in a continuum. It will forever be our pursuit. If we did, we'd never come back. We're all still searching, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still searching. You were saying all this stuff. I'm like, I don't got my shit together like that. I really don't.
Oh yeah, in the beginning, that was always the case with me. All day, I tell people all day, I'm in the studio from my time I get up, time I go to sleep. I mean, I leave out, go get something to eat, that's it. It's like, I can't do anything else.
I don't want to do anything cliche. I don't want to do anything ghetto, street, hood, fill in the blank, murder, these kinds of things. I was like, I want to do more interesting, things that we don't see.
I call myself a concept engineer because what I want to do is manufacture new concepts for the new realities.
Chicago in the mid-50s is where Sonny Blount became Sun Ra. It's where he found the language for what he wanted to do.
He would open your mind to a world that you could have never thought of on your own.
So I came up with Gothic futurism.
Army letters.
Iconoclast panzerism.
It lets you know, man, soul is universal.
In that format, through Tumblr or Instagram or however, it somehow becomes, a part of your world.
Designers have mood boards. That's what they are. They're mood boards.
When I live with the pictures that I make, I feel like there's these conversations happening between the two.
Inside of the Black worldview, Black being the Black Continuum, it's impossible to completely separate out what's magnificent about it and what's miserable about it. Like they're intrinsically bound up.
It's also the psychological effect of that and the ongoing feeling that you're not simply a freewheeling subject, just, moving through the world. And of course, then what this does is it breeds a massive sense of alienation.
This is a brother. I think it's indisputably a brother. He got fronts in his mouth. He's jet black.
It doesn't really get much more alien than that.
All right, so that was the Black Visual Continuum mixtape, and now we're getting towards the end of my lecture, but I do have a few special announcements that I have. There we go. All right, so I will be featured in the prologue for the Black Collages book. Black Collages is a book by Terry Henderson, who is the founding director of the Black Collages Arts Incubator, and this book features 54 emerging and established Black collage artists, and this book will be coming out over the Thanksgiving holiday. And my prologue is the rhythmic continuum of Black collage, having the knack in the cut, cutting up, and getting down. So be sure to follow Black Collages, their website, Instagram, and follow the curator Terry Henderson and the publisher Conyer Publishing. And the next announcement I have is I've been working with artist Johannes Barfield. He is a sample-based artist based out of Winston-Salem. He's a VCU alum, and his exhibition, My Son is Black as the Glowing Sea by Night, will be on display at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte at the Road Galleries on Friday, January 14th, and Johannes and I will be in conversation. Really looking forward to that. So, I'm available for research, graphic design, writing, art direction, curation, workshops, and lectures. And you can follow me on Instagram at Afrovisualism, and if you're interested in working with me, my email is right there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Justin. This was such a generous presentation. So now we will open up the floor for questions.
Justin, were you able, when did your focus on Afrovisualism start? Like, did you start in high school thinking about these concepts?
I started 3 years ago, so I had already graduated college, and in the way that Afrovisualism started, it initially started off as a blog where I would post on my Medium page, and I was just writing about the earlier work that I was interested in. So now it's become a more focused research practice.
Yeah.
Hi, Justin. I thought your lecture was very interesting.
Thank you.
Do you kind of view yourself as like a think tank? Like, is that kind of the concept, it seems like? Like, it seems like Afrovisualism, it seems like it encompasses a lot of things. Like, do you view it as like a sort of a think tank, like for advocacy and for kind of moving this concept of Afrovisualism, which encompasses a lot of various different things, but is that sort of the direction that you think of this kind of going in? Like you embody a lot of things a lot in terms of media and other concepts, because I see that you do like research consulting, workshops, lectures. Like, is that sort of something that you're thinking this to be? Or I don't know if that's worded right, but
Yeah, so with Afrovisualism, like it encompasses all of these ideas, and Afrovisualism is like the central concept, and it's through me. So at the same time, like when I think about Afrovisualism, I'm placing it like in this continuum of Black visual culture and the variety of topics that I talked about. In a way, it's like a think tank where I'm sort of incubating like all of these ideas and concepts that I'm constantly working with. So that's a part of it, and just continuing to grow it and keep it going.
So I really liked your lecture.
Thank
Do you have any favorite kind of like reoccurring visuals or motifs that you kind of see continuing to pop up in either music or even just more visual art?
Yeah, so as far as like reoccurring visuals, like Michael Jackson appears in my work a lot, Beyonce's work appears in my work a lot because, like I was saying, like through pop culture and Black musical culture, that was a part of my gateway in learning about visual art. But some of the artists that were in the presentation directly inspired this practice. So Jen Nakiru, Arthur Jafa, both of them being filmmakers in the way they look at the continuum through a filmmaking lens. I'm also into theorists like Aria Dean, who was in the video that I just made, and Kodwo Eshun, who is also a theorist, and as well as graphic designers too. So I'm also like Hassan Rahim, so I'm interested in looking at artists in different disciplines and how they structure their practice and actively commentating on their practice along with developing my own as well.
Hi. So the video is really cool.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could touch more on, what the crate digging process like looks like in practice. 'Cause I know in conversations that we've had, you've talked about it a bit, but what is like? Could you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yeah. So with crate digging, like I said, it is a concept through hip hop and hip hop musical production, as opposed to like going through records and a lot of what crate digging is sampling. So the ideas behind like sample culture and looking at different ideas at the same time. And with crate digging, like in some of the work I've been doing with Johannes Barfield, like as we were talking in conversation, he showed me some of his archive, and with us, it was just a conversation back and forth of our different ideas that we were thinking about. And what I do is I usually put together like a mood board of images, of videos, of quotes, and we just pick it apart and deconstruct it, and that's a part of the conversational element of it, right? So it's not just in a thing where it's just me, but it's also like an ongoing conversation that I'm having with the artists about their work, but also using my practice as a vehicle to guide their expression.
Thank you so much for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
What would you say in your research so far are the main like contradictory points? 'Cause, like there's one quote that mentioned the positives and negatives embedded within this work.
Yeah, so thinking about like the contradiction and complexity that is in Black culture, like with Afrovisualism, my work is firmly on the creative work of artists, and lots of times when I try to put my focus on the creative work of artists, people want to talk about more so about the person, which is a part of it too, because at the end of the day, these artists are human, but at the same time, I don't like getting like caught up in like the complexities of them as people, because that's like a whole nother conversation, right? So what I do with Afrovisualism is I firmly discuss the creative aspects of their work, and there are some parts of it that don't get acknowledged as much. So when I'm putting together these references, I'm showing you like what are these artists inspired by, and putting those connections and putting them next to each other, it opens the door for those conversations to happen.
Hi, Justin.
Hi.
It's a great lecture.
Thank you.
How to talk in these masks. What has always amazed me about you is the connections you make between things, but not visual, whether they're visual or ideological. And some of the artists that you are highlighting are archive artists, you know, that they're also, their art is making those connections. So as I see your list here and I see your practice grow, I wonder why you don't see yourself as an artist. Why?
Well, I do see myself as an artist too. Like I feel like it started off, like I started like calling myself a curator initially. Like I think about in the way I think about my work as like a curator, researcher, writer, researcher, and as I've been going along, like I'm thinking about how for myself I want to translate these ideas as an artist too, because it's all a part of the work. Like it's like all these ideas of the continuum art intermingling with each other, and that's what I'm looking forward to building on in the future.
So the mixtape that you had there, do you see that as a work?
Definitely. Like initially when I developed the Black Visual Continuum mixtape, it was just the collection of videos that I screen recorded on my phone that I would like post on Instagram and my stories just to give people an idea of some of the work that I was into. But I do definitely think of that as like a project, and one of my favorite artists that I'm always into is Khalil Joseph and his film Black News. So thinking about how visuals are expansive and they evoke different reactions, and people have different connections with the artists in the video. So that's something that I want to continue to explore through film, through collage, possibly through mood boards, and I'm just going to continue to build on that.
Well, seeing you next to a screen this big and just thinking of how you could in a physical way manifest all these connections that you see in your head and we could visually see it, I would love to see your research move in that way, that we could stand in front of it and see it in one space.
For sure.
Where does fashion fit in with all of this?
Yeah, so with fashion, that's one of the areas of research I'm building on now. One of the areas of, like I highlighted high fashion with Michael Jackson and Beyonce. Like those are examples of fashion at like the top tier level where everybody sees it. But I also explore like with fashion brands, especially their logos. What I'm interested in with fashion too is like how the logo and the tone of it when you see it defies the brand. Like even my logo has a certain tone that defines what the brand is. So I intend to continue to explore fashion through a graphic lens.
I have a question. So I noticed that Afrovisualism presents itself digitally. I see that you use TikTok as a tool for researching, and I wonder, and you've shown examples of physical presentations of this as a practice, like the books being splayed out and mapping the references, and then also the very conversations that you have with people. That's another kind of like physical presentation of the practice. And maybe this kind of like jumps off of Shannon's comments about like how you might see physical manifestations of this practice. Just, I don't know, have you thought about any other kinds of like physical presentations of your work?
Yeah, so I've thought about, how when Afrovisualism continues to grow, like how it would continue to shape, and I do want to dabble in different areas as I'm doing now with film making, like what I did with the Black Visual Continuum mixtape. I feel like that's a representation of my work in like a video format, and it's something I want to continue to explore, but also through graphic design, through collage, and potentially book making too, and exhibitions. I feel like to think more about what I do. Like a part of my practice is serving artists and guiding like their thinking, but then there's also a part of me for myself as an artist myself that there are ideas that I'm currently developing, these ideas of the continuum, these ideas of crate digging that I want to continue to expand on.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about before. It's just that in your research and your practice that it forefronts connecting or tending to those connections in a way that, for me, I think like privilege is a kind of intimacy in this research. It's like, yeah, and I think that's something that's kind of rare to spend that time, and also with other people to be tending to those connections. So it's great to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think if you want to stay around, we can continue having conversation more in a more casual level. The cafe still has some snacks outside, so if you want to get a little nibble, we can hang out over there. But thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Justin, again, for this fabulous lecture.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I give you